Good afternoon. In today's episode, we're going to be installing Koni adjustable race inserts into this vehicle behind me. It's a 1987 Lamborghini Jalpa that's in the process of being Ecoboosted with a 2.3 liter GTDI engine with an MMT6 transmission. So we're going to start off with just going over the car a little bit, taking some measurements, showing the CAD work involved, then doing some fabrication to get the Koni strut inserts into the vehicle. Let's begin. First step of any project, of course, is to measure 20 times and cut twice. All right, for the measurements, you've got the rear OEM measurements for all the diameters and lengths. Then I compared many different shocks, strut inserts, looked at the MR2 a lot to figure out what would be the best fit. A couple of the Jalpa owners tend to use the model 1437 Konis that are single adjustable. All these measurements, I decided to use the 8611 double adjustables. You can see it's just the same dimensions as the model 1437. So that is a good fit that everyone's been using on their Jalpas. It's not quite perfect, but it's definitely the closest we could get. Some of the MR2 ones were close. I also got some specs for the compression and rebound characteristics. The double adjustables I feel would be better for my use because of, well, they're double adjustable, but also it looks like they are lower rate in compression, or they can be a lower rate in compression. I believe that'll lead to a more comfortable ride. Of course, that's all based on not grounding out. So if it does end up bottoming out, well, then I can just turn up the knobs and the double adjustables will then start performing more and more like the single adjustables. So with the tuning and the compression and rebound characteristics, I went with the 8611 1259s. First, you start with the stock equipment. There will be unobtainium Lamborghini parts destroyed in the making of this video later on. So here we have the takeoff rear strut assemblies. Springs have been removed, obviously, and taken apart. Gland nut removed. There's the gland nut. And here is the left side of the car with the left rear strut assembly removed. And the MMT6 transmission. More on that in a later video. After several rounds of measurements, ordered the Koni race inserts, 8611, 1259 race, double adjustable, so adjustable rebound and adjustable compression settings. Pretty close dimensions. Couple dimensions are some millimeters off, and that's where we are going to take a grinder to this strut assembly, cut off the bottom. We're also going to have to modify some of these washers to fit everything and grind the heck out of the gland nuts because the gland nut, well, is still back ordered from Koni. Hopefully they show up, but in the meantime we're going to grind away on the original unobtainium Lamborghini parts. cut and weld on the strut assembly, and hopefully make everything fit. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the new Koni inserts with the original, or close to original, strut inserts. I'm not sure if these are actual original parts or not. Part numbers can't really be read too well on the parts. Lining up the mounting surface of the strut mount, you can see how much shorter the new strut is. That's why I need to make that insert in the bottom. So that I have something to hold the strut in place and an ability to get to the adjustment on the bottom of the strut. Another point to make is that when I selected the struts, the plan is to not have as much suspension droop as you see here. Again, that'll help not only with the half shaft angles, which are a little extreme right now, but it should also help the clearance here. So with less of an angle on the suspension arms, slightly shorter strut insert, I should be able to get good half shaft angles and make everything work. That's the theory. People could hate me because I've changed the ride height on the Lambo and changed the droop of the Lambo, but such is life. I couldn't find an exact washer to fit the bottom to hold the strut assembly. All right, we're gonna start grinding the inner diameter and outer diameter of the washer. This is gonna take a long time. After about an hour of grinding, there we have it. Got two washers, perfect diameters. After a lot of grinding on this part, this is the original OEM Lambo gland nut. I enlarged the ID here, and I enlarged this inner diameter as well. This now fits perfectly onto the strut house, onto this new Koni strut. And when I assemble this into this, everything threads together. Next step is going to be to cut the strut housing, insert the custom-made washer. So then I have the top and the bottom of the strut perfectly retained in the strut housing. And again, that's the theory. We'll see what happens. So here's the cut. Now we're going to finish the rest off with just a grinder. gonna clean that up, see what we got. So here is the final ground washer. That fits just perfectly in there. There we go. Gonna take some measurements and figure out where exactly to weld that. I did some CAD modeling showing the OEM shock in the extended and the compressed state. Then the Model 1436 shocks in the extended and the compressed state. Again, I decided not to use these. And so then we developed a model with all the dimensions for the 8611 Koni double adjustable Model 1259s in the extended and compressed state. Just so that I can start comparing these numbers. You know, where does the bottom of the shock sit? 182 millimeters from the up from the bottom of the OEM shock in the extended state, or 151. So compressed 151, compressed 182, a little bit of a difference height. Also, what I noticed was that by doing this, the spring perch theoretically would be moving up 13 millimeters. In all of the dimensions, I used the interface point to the top of the strut as the baseline. So that's where the strut insert goes through the mount on the shock tower. So I lined up everything with that point and determined where the bottom of the strut insert should be in relationship to the OEM strut insert. So I'm looking for a 30 millimeter bottom of the strut dimension in comparison to the OEM strut insert, or I should say what was on the car originally. Again, I can't quite confirm that this is OEM, but it's what was on the car. So I'm going to weld that spacer approximately 30 millimeters from the bottom of where the old strut insert was. Again, that dimension is going to not be quite right because there's a little bulge on the end, so it's going to be probably 35 millimeters is what I'm going to shoot for. All right, looking at the right side that hasn't been taken apart, looks like there's about 7 millimeters between the bottom of the gland nut and the top of the strut housing. I'm going to set up the modified shock, hopefully such that it's about that dimension, and we'll go from there. Again, here's the modified ground enlarged gland nut. Gonna tighten this on so that we have 7 millimeters of gap between here. That's also going to put us right in the middle of the threads. So theoretically, I should be able to tighten it or loosen it if I am off with my welding on the bottom of the strut insert. Yeah, there's 7. That's a better size. 6 and a bit, 7, depending on how you measure it. So there we go. There we go. I had made a mark on the strut housing 30 millimeters in. That was where the cat expected the bottom of the strut to be. When I measure after cutting, pretty close. Maybe 2 millimeters off. Not much. So that is in right exactly where we want it to be. Now I have to MIG weld the washer that's way down in there, and my strut insert is never going to move, and I'm going to be able to access that adjustment bolt with the car on the ground. So let's get the MIG welder out and start welding. And here is the finished completed strut ready for assembly. I'm going to take it to the powder coaters after I get a couple more parts done so that they can all be coated at once. You can see the adjuster is going to be accessible. Got the contour for the clear the half shaft boot, give me a little bit more clearance in that area. And roughly the 7 millimeter spacing here kept. So that's the completed strut assembly. And here it is installed in the vehicle. Should have good clearance to the half shafts. Let's see how different the two suspension arms on. So this is 0. (13.4 degrees). (17.9 degrees). 18. So about 7 degrees of droop reduction. We'll do the math to figure out what that means. But as I said before, a little bit worried about the half shaft angles, so that's why I wanted to bring some of the suspension settings to where they are. I couldn't get the transmission any lower in the car because it was just under ½ an inch of clearance to the subframe. And here's a quick view of the top. Strut's loosely installed. Again, still got to install the springs, but it's going to be in and out a couple times before final installation. And a quick look at the engine bay. Cover more of that in another video. Thanks for watching today's episodes on installing the Koni strut inserts into a vehicle. Many more to come. Stay tuned.